Hello and welcome to Indie Designer Journal episode 10. Yes, we made it to 10 episodes, which is kind of a big deal for me since I didn't know how long this series would go, and I'm just having a good time with it. Today we're going to be looking at, yet again, combat mechanics for the upcoming UnderQuest, which is going to be a solo play dungeon crawl game, sort of expanding on some of the ideas that you saw in Iron Helm. Kind of a predecessor, but there's going to be quite a bit different. It's going to be a completely different game. So we're going to turn the camera around. We're going to try to keep this video as short as possible. So we're going to turn this camera around. We're going to take a look at some of the little prototype that I put together. We're going to run through a quick session of combat, because for me, combat is the starting point when I'm designing a game of this nature. I need to know how the combat's going to work before I can start really making items or enemies or all the things that make up the game. So I've been working on it, as you can go back to all these videos, for months and months and months, coming up with all different types of ideas, whether it's been dice pool mechanics or using cards and all sorts of different things. So I think I'm pretty close to what I want. So let's turn this camera around and see what I got. Hello, welcome to the table. What we're looking at here in front of us is a prototype for UnderQuest. These are just index cards that I spent a little extra time putting some illustrations on, because I ran through this combat so many times that I wanted something kind of pretty to look at. So this is kind of close to what I think the components will be, as far as, a few of the items for UnderQuest. And I think all the enemies are going to come on large jumbo sized cards, because they have quite a bit of information, as we're going to get to in a minute. Heroes are going to have, there's going to be pre-made heroes in UnderQuest, and they're going to probably just come on standard poker cards, because they're just going to tell you just basic information and starting equipment and things of that. There doesn't have to be a lot of room on the card. In UnderQuest, I want you to be able to make your own character from scratch, sort of like Dungeons and Dragons and many other tabletop role-playing games. So you can use the pre-made characters, but you'll be able to actually build your own character as well. I'm actually leaning towards having character sheets. Now, I'm kind of going back and forth on a couple different ideas, and we'll get into that in other videos. But for now, all we need to know is, what do we got here? We got an enemy, we got our hero. We have a weapon for our hero, and a one-use item. I will like to note this says luck potion. If you've watched previous videos, you'll know that there is an alchemy system that I am working on for UnderQuest that I think is pretty unique, where you're basically combining cards to create different effects. And that's not shown here. I just wanted to have some sort of disposable card to create some tension of, should I use this now or not? So what do we got here? We have an enemy. He is the corrupted gypsy. I've gotten some feedback that gypsy is not necessarily a great term to be using, so I will probably change that. I just sort of gave him a name so I had something to be fighting. So we have this bad guy. This little icon here with the lightning is his initiative. What's different about UnderQuest compared to Iron Helm is there's hit locations on both the enemy and on your character. This is a humanoid that we're fighting, so he has exactly the same hit locations as our hero here, who is Mulligan, and he is some sort of human warrior. He's been in previous games. He was in Iron Helm, but what's interesting is that there's little different numbers on each location, so that you've seen this before in other games. I'm just utilizing, because I think it's nice to be able to have different locations of your body protected in different ways, and some of them being more prone to taking damage. So as you see here, we have this bad guy here. He has head. If I roll a 12, this is the hit location. That's the only real purpose I have for this dice yet. Hopefully I can come up with something else to utilize it for, but I like the 12-sided dice for hit location because it gives a nice variety. As I said, this is a humanoid, so he shares the same hit locations as our character, but there will be other enemies like this guy here that I made the Oculus Shifter, and he has different locations that are more prone to different types of attacks and damages and things of that nature. It only has 3 locations because most of him is his body and or his legs, and his eye is the target you're trying to hit. So the interesting thing about having hit locations is that using your character's agility, because you're actually going to be utilizing your stats or your attributes more in UnderQuest, and actually you really didn't use them a whole lot at all in Iron Helm, but you're going to be using them a lot in UnderQuest. So Molekyn has agility 2, brawn 3, mind 2. You'll be using those for checks during different quests and adventures. Little things you'll run into will have you do a check on that, and you'll essentially roll 6-sided dice and have to roll under. Or you have to roll under your own stat, or your stat or under. So very simple, classic mechanic there. So we should probably get into combat. How does the combat work? So we have hit location, we have some dice. What did I end up going with? A dice pool system? No. As much as I like the dice pool system, I kept coming back to wanting to have a little bit more control, and I felt that all the play testing I did with dice pools, as much fun as it was to roll dice and spend energy to roll more dice, it just felt a little bit off to me, and a little bit too much luck was involved. So now what we're using is the same basic combat system that was used in Tin Helm with a few twists. So you're rolling 2 6-sided dice and you're subtracting the results to create an actual final result. So for the hero, it works a little bit differently than it does for the enemy. For the hero, your weapon that you're utilizing will determine how much damage you do. So you're actually going to be spending energy just like you would in Tin Helm. So I could say in Tin Helm, this was a part of your race, I believe. No, or your character class determined how much damage you did based on your energy you spent. So if I wanted to spend, say this is my energy pool, I have 12, I can spend 2. That means I'm going to, if I'm successful at hitting, I'm going to get to add 2 to my total damage, and I'm going to get the effect of stunning my enemy. So we can have all different types of things that weapons can do now, instead of they just deal damage. Like in Iron Helmet, weapons really maybe had a little bit of flavor text, and it allowed you to maybe change or re-roll a dice or something. But now weapons are going to have all sorts of things that they can possibly do to your enemy. So that's what's really interesting, is that so on your turn, if I'm attacking him, I'm going to roll my 2 dice, always roll these 2 dice, and then I'm going to subtract the results. So I rolled a 6 and a 5, and I rolled a 1, so I'm going to do 1 damage, because it's 6 minus 5 is 1, plus an additional 1 damage. Well, how many? I have to decide before I do that how much energy I'm going to spend. So the first thing I'm going to do in combat, just like in my previous games, is I'm going to decide how much energy I'm going to spend. So maybe I want to spend 2 energy. So I'm going to spend 2 energy. And then I'm going to roll these 2 dice. I got a 3 and a 1. I'm going to subtract the results. So that's 2. And I go look here, and I get to add 2 to that. Plus I get to automatically stun the enemy. Now he's going to get to do a check to see if he actually is stunned, and to see if you actually are stunned, you have to do a check against your brawn, and all the enemies are actually going to have their own stats. So there'll be a nice card that has all the different effects, stunning, and different things you can do, and what check they how you resolve them, so you can have easy access to that reference material. But for the sake of this, stunning is a check against brawn. So is he going to be stunned? He'll have to do a check. So he'll roll a dice. He rolled a 5, which is above his brawn, which means he will be stunned. What does stunning do? That means they get to attack him again. He basically skips his turn. Now, if he would have rolled a 1 or a 2, he would have the stunning wouldn't have worked on him. So different enemies, this axe is going to do better against than other enemies. So that's where I think this game is going to be quite a bit of fun. Now, weapons like the axe that are physical are going to have requirements of different brawn requirements. Now, more basic items, more basic weapons are going to have a smaller requirement, but there might be some giant, two-handed battle axe, of the ungodly power of some sort, that's going to require, you might have to have 5 brawn to wield it. So that's where some of these stats start coming into play. It's going to limit what weapons you can have access to. Now, having said that, there's also going to be weapons that are focused on the mind. So there'll be things like scepters and wands and runes and things that your character can be essentially carrying in their primary hand that actually are that they use for attacking. But now some of those are going to require certain levels of mind. So this character here might not be able to use some of these items. So it's really going to affect what items you're able to use. Now, obviously, agility is probably going to be weapons that are going to require, dexterity or some sort of hand-eye coordination, like throwing spears or throwing daggers or a bow and arrow, things of that nature. Now, let's take a look at, so we have a general sense of how our character attacks. You decide how much energy you want to spend. You decide, so you make that decision, and that's set in stone. You roll 2 dice, you look for the result, and that's how much damage you do. And then you get to figure out how much additional damage you do based on how much energy you put into that attack. Now, just like in previous games, if you roll doubles, it's a miss. Okay, now there might be certain items that are brittle in nature or whatever, and if you roll doubles, maybe there's some text in here that says that item is broken and you have to discard it. So there'll be all sorts of things I can do with this system that I think is going to be quite fun. Now, the enemy works quite a bit differently. Not quite a bit differently. He has the same hit locations. Now, when I rolled these 2 dice, I should have rolled a 12-sided dice to see where I hit. Okay. Now, let's say I hit a 10. Okay. Now, there's a reason I picked 10 because, excuse me, each one of these attributes have different effects in combat. Like we just discussed, they can tell you what items you can use, but agility specifically allows your character to aim. And this is one of the main reasons I wanted to add hit locations on enemies, is because now I can use an agility skill to adjust your hit location dice. So I have an agility of 2, which means I can plus or minus my result on my hit location by that amount. So I could go up 1 or 2 or down 1 or 2 to basically aim my weapon into the locations that I think are better for my character to hit. So we can see this character here isn't wearing any armor on for his primary hand. He has no protection there. Furthermore, his head has this SS, which I think soft shell, or I had some sort of term for it. There'll be a better name for it, prone or something along that lines. But certain parts of enemies are going to take damage differently. It's a soft spot. That's what it stood for. So I can adjust this dice roll because of my agility up to a 12, and now I can do double damage because that's this particular enemy is weak in his head. Now, that I think is quite a bit of fun. Now, how does the enemy attack us? Quite simply, he does the same thing. He rolls the dice, but it works differently. He doesn't have energy. He doesn't spend energy. So how do I negate that? I just roll the 2 dice. I subtract the results. We know our hit location is going to be 5. He can't adjust that. Maybe certain enemies might be able to. But for now, what I've come up with is a system quite similar to, I think it's Spire's End, which I've watched a few videos on. I like the system they used, where they were using a system where you drew a card, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, or something along that lines, and then you referred to a chart and it told you how the enemy attacked you. What's really cool about that is you could really make enemies feel unique, and they can have sort of strange ways that they behave. Now, the only issue I took with the way Spire's ended, now it probably works perfectly fine for that game, but my understanding is there's equal number of each card. So this number 1 happens the same amount of time as number 5 or whatever it might be. Where with this dice mechanic that I utilize almost all the time, this subtraction mechanic, rolling a 1 is extremely common. Rolling a 5 is very difficult. So I could really choose. I could have things that I want the enemy to do on a very commonly. I could have as a 1, and things I want to happen more rarely I could have as a 5. Now if he rolls doubles, I have his skull icon. That's not doubles, Jason. I have a skull icon that can trigger something else. So that's what doubles will be. A skull will be triggered, and there could probably be tokens that you'll throw on this enemy card, and maybe the more skulls, the more potent this thing becomes. There's a lot of things you can do with this system. Now, we're not going to actually do a playthrough because I don't think we have time to do that, but I think this gives you a good general idea of how this system is going to work. It's going to go back and forth quite a bit more than Iron Helm. Now, you're probably saying, oh, I don't want combat to be so drawn out. Well, my biggest issue is when I played Iron Helm, and I'm the designer, but my issue I had with my own design is that the combat seemed really quick. Like you could kill a guy and you're always trying to kill him in your first hit. There was very few times there was back and forth, except maybe when he got to the boss, and even then it's like you really had to kill him right away. Where in this, I want UnderQuest to have a little bit less combat. I want there to be more narrative and other things going on to develop your character. I want combat to be kind of scary, and when you get into combat, I want it to be a little bit more of a challenge. I want there to be tactical decisions, and I want it to be a little bit of a back and forth, maybe 2 or 3 rounds, instead of just kill the enemy and get out of there before he gets to get a counter strike on you. So that's essentially how the combat system works. Please leave comments below if you have any ideas or suggestions or other games that I should check out. Thank you. Thanks again for sticking around. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe and hit the bell or whatever the things are you're supposed to be doing to let me know that you're enjoying these videos, and I'll keep making them. So if you have any ideas for other tweaks to the system that I just showed you, please leave your comments below or your thoughts on the system. I love to hear your feedback, and I love to reply to all the comments. So see you next time. Thanks.